One of the biggest criticisms the Dragon Ball series faces is how it always seems to bring back characters who died at the end of the arc. People say that this decision of bringing back characters with the Dragon Balls lowers the stakes and the consequences of the fight against the main villain of that particular arc, and that they should have stayed dead instead. So the real question today is, does death really matter in Dragon Ball? Did the deaths really have no impact on the story and its characters? Well, in this video, I'm going to go through all the biggest deaths in Dragon Ball to determine whether death actually matters in Dragon Ball or not. So starting off with the original Dragon Ball, the first death we hear about was Grandpa Gohan. Before the events of the first chapter, Goku grew up with Grandpa Gohan, but then he was killed by Goku in his Great Ape form, and since then, Goku lived by himself for several years, not knowing much about the world. And this leads to Goku meeting Bulma and them going on their adventure of looking for the 7 Dragon Balls, because Goku was curious about searching for the other Dragon Balls, because he had the 4-star Dragon Ball that Gohan left behind. I would say that Gohan's death mattered and impacted the story, because Goku had to live in isolation for several years before meeting Bulma, and Bulma managed to convince him to join her instead of just staying at Mount Palsu for the rest of his life. And it also made the Great Ape transformation much more menacing, after we find out that Goku was the one who actually killed Gohan, which was kind of a dark twist at the beginning of the series. The next death was Upa's father Bora in the Red Ribbon Army arc. This death was very important because Goku promised Upa that he would look for all of the Dragon Balls in order to bring his father back to life. This led to Goku and his friends meeting Fortune Teller Baba for the first time, and they had to fight in a tournament in order to find the last Dragon Ball. So the death of Bora literally pushed the story forward into a whole new arc, all to bring back Upa's father. And it was the same arc where Goku meets his grandpa Gohan after a long time, which was a very emotional moment for Goku. The next death was Krillin at the end of the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai. This death was used as a way to transition from one arc to the next one, that being the Demon King Piccolo arc. The death was mainly used as shock value, and it was used to show how Dragon Ball was slowly becoming a darker series. I would say that Krillin's death was important in changing the tone of Dragon Ball into a darker one, and also because Krillin died, Goku became so angry that he left his friends in order to go after Tambourine for revenge. And this leads to Goku meeting Yajirobe, and Yajirobe was the one who took Goku to the top of Korin Tower to drink the Ultra Divine Water. Next was the deaths of Master Roshi and Chaozu. The two of them were killed by King Piccolo when he was wishing for eternal youth. It was because the two of them died that Piccolo was able to wish for eternal youth, and as soon as his wish was granted, he killed Shenron, meaning that Roshi and Chaozu couldn't come back to life. So Goku had to go and meet Mr. Popo and Kami himself to find a way to bring them back. But in exchange, Goku had to train with Kami for 3 years for the next tournament. It was this training where we see Goku evolve as a martial artist, as he has better control of his ki, which was crucial in the defeat of Piccolo Jr. So because of the deaths of Roshi, Shenron and Chaozu, we were introduced to characters like Mr. Popo and Kami, who become important characters in the series moving forward. And it also pushed the story into a 3-year time skip, where Goku was separated from his friends in order to train for the tournament. Moving on to the Saiyan saga in Dragon Ball Z, the first death in that arc was the death of Goku when he fought against Raditz with Piccolo. The death of Goku in the Saiyan saga was extremely important because not only was Gohan forced to train with Piccolo and therefore developing their friendship, Goku was also sent to the afterlife and he had to travel along Snake Way to King Kai's planet. This expanded the world of Dragon Ball because it introduced us to the afterlife, and we learned about the Kais and the whole hierarchy because Goku was able to meet with King Kai. And because of this, Goku learned the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb as a result, which are two of the most important techniques in Goku's moveset. And also, because Goku died, when Nappa was facing off against the Z Fighters, Goku couldn't make it in time because he had to travel all the way back through Snake Way again, and during this time, the Z Fighters were losing their lives by the time Goku arrived. And speaking of the Z Fighters, their deaths raised the stakes and tension of the arc, because they were training hard for a year in preparation for the Saiyans to arrive, but then Nappa ended up killing the majority of them. And because Chaozu already died once by King Piccolo, there was no way to bring him back with the Earth's Dragon Balls, so everyone had to figure out a way to bring them all back. Krillin, Gohan and Bulma literally had to travel all the way to planet Namek to use their Dragon Balls to bring back their friends. So this introduced us to planet Namek, which was the home planet of Piccolo and Kami, and it further expanded the world building in the series. The Namek arc simply cannot happen without the deaths of the Z Fighters, because they only went to Namek to find the Dragon Balls. This leads to the introduction of Frieza, arguably the most iconic villain in all of Dragon Ball. Dende is also introduced in this arc as well, who becomes an important character later on. And it's also the arc where Vegeta starts to work with the main cast, instead of being the main villain anymore. In the Namek saga, the first major death was the death of the Elder Guru. Because Elder Guru died, the Namekian Dragon Balls were turned to stone, and this meant that Frieza couldn't make his wish to become immortal. This angered him, and he starts to fight against Krillin, Gohan and Vegeta as a result. And because the Namekian Dragon Balls were turned to stone, the Z Fighters that were killed by Nappa couldn't be brought back to life, which was the entire reason they went to Namek in the first place. And at that point, none of the characters thought there was a way to bring anyone back, since the Namekian Dragon Balls were turned to stone, and Shenron couldn't bring back Chaozu. so this raised the stakes during the fight against Frieza. Then after Guru's death, you have the death of Dende after Frieza transforms into his final form. He immediately kills him with a death beam, and this only raised the stakes of the fight against Frieza even further. Dende was the main healer of the group, because Goku had already used up all the Senzu beans when they fought the Ginyu Force, and all the other restoration machines in Frieza's ship were all destroyed except the one that Goku was in. So there was no way for any character to be healed, and Vegeta couldn't use his Zenkai boost anymore since Dende was no longer there to heal him from near death. After Dende's death was Vegeta's death on Namek. Even though Vegeta comes back to life at the end of the saga, I feel this death was very important to the character of Vegeta. This was where we finally see Vegeta open up about his past, and him talking about the fact that Frieza always used and hated the Saiyan race to the point that he destroyed their entire planet in fear that Super Saiyan would rise among them. Vegeta is an elite high-class Saiyan warrior, whereas Goku is only a low-class warrior who was raised on Earth. Vegeta begging Goku to defeat Frieza and avenge the Saiyan race shows extreme character growth from Vegeta, because the elite warrior actually put aside his pride for once and entrusted his hopes onto a lower-class fighter. So although Vegeta does come back, it was this death where we start to see Vegeta develop as a character. And the final death in the Namek saga was the second death of Krillin. This might be one of, if not the most important death in all of Dragon Ball, because of how much it changes and impacts the series moving forwards. Goku was able to transform into a Super Saiyan for the first time, because he literally saw his best friend die in front of his eyes by Frieza. This caused one of the most important plot points to occur in Dragon Ball, and it majorly impacts the story moving forward. Super Saiyan becomes a lot more prevalent throughout Dragon Ball, and it's arguably the most iconic transformation in all of anime. It's also the fact that Krillin had already died once before on Earth, so Goku really thought that Krillin could never come back to life, so there was a lot of high emotional stakes from Krillin's death on Namek. If Krillin never died, Goku wouldn't have become a Super Saiyan, his sons Gohan and Goten wouldn't have become Super Saiyans as well, and also Vegeta and Trunks wouldn't have become Super Saiyans too. Goku was the first to achieve that form, and it was only unlocked through the death of Krillin. In the Cell and the Android saga, the first deaths were the Z fighters from the future, like future Gohan for example. These deaths mattered a lot, because it was the death of future Gohan that led to Trunks becoming a Super Saiyan, and then Bulma builds a time machine for Trunks to go back 17 years in the past to warn Goku and the others about the androids. This plot line simply cannot happen if the Z fighters from the future never died. And the reason why Cell even went to the past through the time machine, because androids 17 and 18 were killed by Trunks in his timeline. So Cell had to kill Trunks to go back in time to a period where the androids were still alive. So it was the deaths of certain characters in different timelines that caused Cell and future Trunks to go back in time for the present, and thus the events of the Cell saga was able to take place. Android 16 was the next character who died in the Cell saga, and his death was the main trigger for Gohan to become a Super Saiyan 2. Just like with Krillin's death on Namek, Android 16's death was the main trigger for another Super Saiyan transformation, and it was because of Super Saiyan 2 that Cell was finally defeated, and Gohan became the hero who saved the world. Without Android 16's death, this cannot happen, and Cell would have killed everyone, so this death mattered a lot to the story. Android 16 also never came back to life at the end, because he was an android, so this death only mattered a lot more. After that is the death of future Trunks after Cell survived the explosion. This death was important for Vegeta's character, because throughout the Android in the Cell saga, Vegeta expressed no sense of care for his family and he only cared about beating Cell. So to see him lash out in anger after seeing his son die shows more growth in his character, because Vegeta is no longer the cold-hearted Saiyan he was when we were first introduced to him. And then, you have Goku's death at the end of the Cell games. Because Goku died, when he was in the afterlife, he was there with Gohan, pushing him to defeat Perfect Cell, and this led to the father-son Kamehameha. Gohan was losing hope and confidence after seeing Super Perfect Cell survive the explosion, but it was Goku who helps Gohan remember what it is he has to do, and likes to believe in his own strength to destroy Cell. After Cell was defeated, Goku asked to stay dead, because he felt he was a magnet that would constantly pull evil people to him. So Goku was dead for 7 years, and during this time, Gohan goes to high school and slacks on his training, and Goten spent the first 7 years of his life not knowing who his father was, until Goku came back for the tournament. During the Buu saga, the first death in that saga was Vegeta's sacrifice against Majin Buu. This death is one of the most iconic moments in the entire series, and it's arguably Vegeta's greatest moment in the series as well. This is probably the moment where Vegeta became a fan favourite for a lot of Dragon Ball fans. Vegeta started out as a cold-hearted Saiyan who only cared for himself and his pride, but over time, he started to form connections with people on Earth, and he even started a family. Him sacrificing himself to protect the Earth was a great way to bring closure to his character arc that has been ongoing since the Saiyan saga. So although Vegeta does come back to life at the end of the Buu saga, the more important thing to take from this is that his character himself went through a great change because of this sacrifice. So this death was very important for his character, and the story of Dragon Ball as a whole. The next death was the deaths of everyone on Kame's lookout by Super Buu. These deaths didn't really matter too much, besides maybe Chi-Chi's, since her death motivated Goten to become stronger. but I think everyone else's deaths didn't do anything to impact or move the plot forward, since they didn't have an impact on those affected, and there was no plot line where they had to find a way to bring them back to life. And the final death in the Buu saga was when Kid Buu destroyed everyone on Earth. I feel like the deaths of everyone on Earth didn't mean much as well, because the reason why Goku instant transmits into Supreme Kai's planet was because the Earth was about to be destroyed, and not necessarily the deaths of the people living there. They also came back to life during the fight against Kid Buu, and they all shared their energy to the Spirit Bomb, so I don't think the deaths of everyone on Earth was that impactful, since it was very short-lived, and it didn't really manage to move the plot forward as well. And that is all the major character deaths from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. From looking at most of the deaths, they were all very important in that they managed to create a massive impact on its characters, and they all managed to move the plot forward because of these deaths. People criticize the deaths in Dragon Ball because most of the deaths were not permanent, since when you look at other anime series, death scenes tend to be more permanent, and there is a lot more emotional weight to them as a result. But emotional moments aren't the only ways to utilize deaths in a series, and that is very evident with Dragon Ball. Many pivotal plot lines in Dragon Ball simply cannot exist if it wasn't for the deaths of certain characters, like in the Namek saga, the Cell saga, and the Fortune Teller Baba saga. And some of Vegeta's greatest moments came from death scenes, whether he was going to be brought back to life or not. So yes, I do think death matters a lot in Dragon Ball, but it's just not done in the typical way you would expect death scenes to occur in another anime and manga series. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.